I saw the really, really positive impact it had on her. You know, she was much more at peace within herself. It was just an amazing change I saw in her, because she was just a completely different person. I don't know how to it was just amazing to see, because before, as where she would worry a lot, now she
Yeah.
would, you know, say, oh, this is what it's meant to be, or you know, she wouldn't get so stressed. She was just at peace, and it was just amazing to see. And I think that was when I started to think about, you know, what is this? That started to take my interest when I saw the changes it had in her. I started to become very curious and ask questions. I do think that the more I read about it, the more at peace I felt. Even before I took my Shahada, something just kept drawing for me towards him.
Today I'm joined by Sister Brigitte. She's originally from Denmark and has been living in London for the last 21 years. She converted in 1999, 21 years ago. A midwife by profession, she's passionate about charity, dawah, and human rights. How are you today, Brigitte?
I'm good, Alhamdulillah, sister. How are you?
I'm good, thank you very much. Thanks to Allah. So yeah, talk to us a bit about how it was for you growing up in Denmark. What was the religious culture like, or did you grow up with any religion?
I think a lot of people in Denmark call themselves Christian, or did at the time. I think now it's more popular to say they're an atheist. But when I was growing up, a lot of people said they were Christian, but majority is not practicing. And it was almost like if you had a religion, you would be bullied, you would be picked on. Because I remember there was quite a few practicing Christians in our school, and, you know, people were making fun of them, or, you know, making little comments. So religion was not really a much talked about topic. It would actually be easier to talk about inappropriate stuff than religion.
So
Yeah,
yeah, when was your first religious experience then?
I mean, you do. So when you're around like a few months old in Denmark, you get baptized, which most people do. And then again, when you're 13, you have to do it again. So you go to church with your whole class, and you take an oath, and then usually have a big party afterwards. That's quite normal. But I would say it's like culture. That's just what you do. It doesn't mean that you're religious
Yeah.
or be it. And a lot of people have like really, really big parties, and that's why they do it, because, you know, they get a bike, they get money, they get lots of different things. It's usually you have very big parties.
It's like a rite of passage almost. But in
Yeah,
the same way in the West we celebrate all these different festive holidays, but it doesn't bear much religious meaning.
yeah.
Yeah. Were you engaging? Would you consider yourself at that time? Were you Did religion serve any purpose in your life personally?
No, not at all. We grew up as Christians, but we were not practicing at all. Um, I have to say, Alhamdulillah, you know, I do feel really, really blessed, because my mom, and I grew up with a stepdad. So my mom divorced when I was very little, and she lived with another man when I was 2. So I've known him only as my dad. But, you know, they were very, very strict, kind of strict, but still let us live our life. But, you know, we were taught right from wrong. We were very loved. We did lots of things together as a family. I had a really, really good upbringing.
Right.
And I think the older I get, the more I actually appreciate what they did for me.
Sounds like really good values that you were
Yes,
able
very
to
good
draw.
values,
Yeah.
but also, yeah, we were certainly brought up with good manners. It's funny. I remember my mom just a few days ago. She said to me, "Do you remember when you put your jacket in the fridge?" And I was like, "No." She's like, "I think you must have been like 4 or 5." So we used to have a summer house, and we would go there usually every weekend, like from spring to autumn, and then during the holidays. So we'd come home to our normal house like Sunday evening, and as I came inside, I walked in through the door. I asked, "What do you want me to do with my jacket?" And my dad, he was like, "Put it in the fridge." So I did.
But
So a little later, when he was actually cooking that night, so when he had to grab something from the fridge, he was like, "Who put that? Why is your jacket in the fridge?" And my mom, she just looked at him and said, "Well, don't you remember you taught her to?" And he was like, "Well, I didn't mean that." But yeah, it was, yeah. No, alhamdulillah.
you
I
did it
mean,
without questioning him. Like, okay, he told me
yeah.
to put it in the fridge, so I'll put it in the fridge.
It's like, yeah. But, at the same time, we certainly knew right from wrong, but it wasn't like he didn't beat us, we could still have fun. I did a lot of things, actually, alhamdulillah. We were planting things. We went to the beach together because the summer house was not far from the beach. We did a lot of things together, and yes, alhamdulillah,
So,
especially now when I see, lots of families not having either their mom or dad, or even though that some families that live together, they don't always do a lot of things together. So yes, I definitely feel incredibly blessed for my upbringing. Alhamdulillah.
so going forward to your first exposure to Islam, what were the events or the details surrounding that?
Um,
Did you
my
grow up around any Muslims or?
not. I mean, there was a few. I remember there was a guy from Turkey in my class, not practicing though. Um, there were some Arabs in my city. Denmark is very, very small. It's just under 6 million people in the whole country. From like where I live in Denmark, it's like kind of the Midlands here, just to the other side of Germany, which we usually did. Is like 2 hours. So it's like the
Oh
same from one
wow.
side of London to the other side.
Yeah.
So it's really, really tiny. Um, there wasn't, I wasn't really exposed that much when I was growing up. It was more like when I became a teenager. I went to boarding school when I was 16, and I think that was really my first proper like exposure. I think, alhamdulillah, we used to travel with my parents a lot, and I always loved like different cultures. I always, I think curious. I was always curious about other cultures. Not really religion, but yeah, because we used to travel. So when I started boarding school, there was a Somali guy there, and we became very close friends or good friends together with another guy and another girl. And obviously at the time, because I wasn't a Muslim, we were selling birthday parties, and he was invited. And it was funny because my mom, I think at the time, she was starting to search or look at religions. And so she asked him, oh, so you believe in Allah? And my brother, Astaghfirullah, turned around and said, who the hell is that? Like, we had absolutely no idea. I didn't know either, but my mom was had much more knowledge. So I think from him, I got a little more insight. Again, he wasn't very practicing, so it wasn't really something that he spoke a lot about. And then a couple of years later, my mom, she became friends with a Palestinian family. And I think that's really when it started, because they started to explain a lot about the religion. Not as in preaching, not at all. It was just, it just came naturally.
Yeah.
If something happened, they would say, oh, Islam say this, or in Islam we do that, or, if there was something on the news about Muslims, they would say, oh, they might say it like that, but that's not what Islam say. Islam is like that. So I think that was really the first time that I really started to see another picture. I think growing up, I wouldn't say I believed in God, but I always believed in something bigger. I couldn't understand Christianity, so I wouldn't say that I believed in one God, but I definitely believed of, something much bigger.
When would you say that you started to take a real active interest, or did it ever happen that you were actively searching for, air quotes, the truth? Or when would you say you became more enthralled with the idea of religion?
I wasn't particularly searching. It was, it was actually the same time. So we started to know this family. And then what happened, I went to Costa Rica for 6 months as a volunteer. And when I came back, my mom had taken her shahada.
Wow.
So my mom became a Muslim 18 months before me. And I didn't know she was searching or anything. I mean, yeah, we were very good friends with the family, but that doesn't mean that you need to change your religion, right?
You didn't expect to find that when you came back home, right?
Yeah, absolutely not. However, I saw the really, really positive impact it had on her. I could get goosebumps as I speak of this. She was much more just at peace within herself. It was just an amazing change I saw in her, because she was just a completely different person. And I don't know how to explain it. It was just amazing to see, because before, as where she would worry a lot, now she would, say, oh, this is what it's meant to be, or she wouldn't get so stressed. She was just at peace, and it was just amazing to see. And I think that was when I started to think about, what is this? She obviously prayed, and that started to take my interest when I saw the changes it had in her. I started to speak to Palestinian family more, and I started to become very curious and ask questions. Yeah.
Were there any particular concepts within Islam that were hard for you to deal with, or took some further digging, or just time to accept it? like prayer maybe. I mean, it's a big jump to go for some people from not praying to praying 5 times a day, or do you know what I mean? Certain
Yeah.
parts of the religion, even the headscarf.
I think I was actually quite slow. And thinking back, I remember thinking, for example, I had a thought saying, like, when I become a Muslim, I don't want to be what I saw at the time as extreme. So I would maybe still wear a skirt, but like where you could see just above the ankles. So I wouldn't mind it not being like completely long. Or, you know, when I become a Muslim, I would do things like that. Or when I become a Muslim, I like it like this. And I remember we had a Danish friend also who, she's a Muslim, but she's not covered. Like, you wouldn't be able to see that she's a Muslim on the street. And I remember once she said to me, I don't know why you still haven't taken your Shahada, because you are saying yourself when you become a Muslim, so what is stopping you? And I remember she had a son, well, they got 3 boys, but one, her oldest one, he was like a few years younger than me. He said, you know, if you're meant to die, you know, if I just touch you, it will happen. And so they started to speak about death and say, you know, if you haven't taken your Shahada, you know, what happened? We never know what's going to happen. And, you know, inshallah, nothing will happen. But if you're going to go home and you get run over by a car, you know, why are you waiting? You're taking so long. And I think that really
hit home.
Yeah, that hit home. So, yeah.
On the day of your Shahada that you became a Muslim, can you describe any like emotions and the feelings around it, or particular spiritual experiences? When did you start to really experience that closeness with Allah?
I think I already felt, you know, the more knowledge I gained, I felt like I'm becoming closer. And I think just leading up to my Shahada, you know, I think everyone or a lot of people do that, saying, you know, if there's a sign, show me.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, you're sitting there and waiting for a for a sign, and you know, nothing moves. You're like, okay, you know, show me a sign. Let the fly, you know, fly away. And I do think that the more I read about it, the more at peace I felt, even before I took my Shahada. Something just kept drawing for me towards him.
Yeah.
Actually, when I took my Shahada, I was at home by myself. And in Denmark, I was told to say my Shahada 3 times, otherwise it wasn't valid. So I had on several occasions, weirdly enough, actually stood under the shower and only said my Shahada once. I would only do it once and I would be like, I'm still not a Muslim because I haven't done it 3 times in a row.
Are you practicing?
I don't really know why I couldn't do it like 3 times. And I don't remember over how long actually this was for either. It's weird, isn't it? I was fearful of taking, you know, like the full step, because once you say I'm a Muslim, there's a lot of other things that follows.
Yeah. Yeah, and how did that progress after? Were those fears unfounded, or like did Allah give you what you needed after you finally took your shahada?
No, Alhamdulillah. When I took my shahada, it was still at home. Again, Denmark is so small. We don't really have a mosque. We do now, 21 years later, but we didn't at the time have a mosque in the city where I was from. And, Alhamdulillah, he made it very easy for me. I think because my mom had kind of led the way already.
Yeah.
So when I told my family, my dad especially was really shocked, but he accepted, and so did my other family. So I've never really had any problems with family rejecting me, or I had family questioning me, but not in that way at all, alhamdulillah. And for me, it just, every time I read, for example, a surah or a chapter of the Quran, it just made sense to me. I was just so much at peace. And I remember the Danish woman, her husband, because there was not a lot of learning resources for us at the time. We didn't have as many things we do now. He actually recorded a tape for me so I could learn my prayer. That's how I learned my prayer. Yeah. So every time I prayed, I would put that tape on so I could learn how to say it. Yeah. Alhamdulillah.
How do you feel that Islam, or just the spiritual changes that you've talked about, or even challenges, has interacted with the work that you do? You're a midwife by profession, and how long have you been a midwife?
Just over 6 years.
Just over 6 years. And has there been any, like I said, either challenges or pros to how the relationship between the two have interacted?
London is quite multicultural, I think. So I think, alhamdulillah, again, I'm quite blessed with where I live. Of course, you get some people who, are narrow-minded, or you can just feel the way they speak to you. Perhaps they don't like Muslims, or they're ignorant, or they haven't been exposed before, because sometimes it's fear too. But I usually find that after a while, when they get to know me and how I do my work, I don't usually have any problems. Not because I'm a Muslim anyway.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So yeah, I remember once. So I looked after this lady who had already had her baby. So I came in the morning, introduced myself. I checked her and the baby over to make sure they were fine. Her partner wasn't there at the time, and then I went away. And then a bit later on, she needed help, and so I went in to help her, and her partner was there. And when he saw I was wearing a scarf, I'm a Muslim, he looked at me and he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry I wasn't here in the morning. I was with my other wife." I was so shocked that I actually had to walk out, because they were white English, they were not like.
Oh, okay, I see. It was. What do you mean he was trying to be like insinuate something bad about our religion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Had there been like Indian or African, or like, maybe I would have understood, it would be a joke, but the way he said it,
Yeah,
I
it
just
wasn't
knew. So
appropriate to make a
I
joke.
was so shocked I had to walk out and then come back. But again, at the end of it, before I finished my shift, he actually came to say thank you for looking after his wife. So
Wow,
I hope small things like that, as
definitely.
long as you, um, don't be rude, have good manners, and, care for them the way you should do, then it has a positive impact, because he has seen, we're not all bad.
Yeah.
And, we do treat people with kindness and care. And regardless of whether it's in the media or whether they just haven't been around Muslims or whether they don't know about Islam, at least I know he can say, oh, but I have experienced this and this, and she was all right.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. Sometimes action speaks louder than words.
I think you're very right about it. Is those tiny little situations, if we're able to compose ourselves, because that
Yeah.
person, you never know what kind of ripple effect it will have if he goes back to whoever he knows, and maybe he will not say, but he can at least admit to himself that he had an experience with a Muslim midwife, and it was okay. She was a good midwife.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe he won't say anything, but at least I know that he came to say thank you, and I know that he was grateful. So exactly.
It just reminds me of at the beginning of your story when you mentioned the interactions that you and your family had with the Palestinian family. And it's those small seeds, like we don't know, he could not say anything, or it could have a big, huge ripple effect. But it took a lot of self control and peace. Like you say, you mentioned the peace that you and your mother now have since finding Islam, to be able to let it go. Just that small little microaggression.
Yes, I think, the way I look at people is like, everyone is a potential Muslim, regardless of, what they're doing now or what past they have. It's not for us to judge. We are just there to be kind and help others
Yeah.
be the best version of themselves.
So important. So, if you could offer any advice to listeners out there who are thinking about becoming a Muslim, what would it be?
I think, it's important to obviously learn about Islam and understand, if they have any questions, do ask, inshallah. I think sometimes I found that I was quite hard on myself
Yeah.
when I took my Shahada, and I feel sometimes it backfired because I wanted to do everything at once. But I can't do, like, we're humans, we can't do that. You can't, from the day you take your Shahada, you can't stop listening to music. You can't stop celebrating Christmas, birthday. You can't start praying 5 times a day. You can't do all these things at once. So, give yourself time. Of course, prayers are very important. But yeah, just take small steps. Take small steps.
Yeah.
Inshallah.
Wonderful advice, sister.
Yes.
Okay, it was such a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you for sharing your story with us.
No, thank you for having me.
Is there, if any people out there, listeners, would like to reach out to you, are there any social media handles or ways to contact we can put in the show notes?
I am on Facebook. I am also on Instagram. I'm also on Twitter, but I'm not really using Twitter. I think Facebook that's the one where I'm most active. So yes, they can if they like to.
Fantastic. Okay, sister, it was great talking to you. As I said, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah khairan, sister. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alayki.